My girlfriend of 2 years cheated, and I didn't find out till she was engaged 3 months later. But I got the last laugh. I met my ex when we were both attending college. I was 24 and she was 22. I'd never really dated much before her. I'd just gotten out of a toxic, year-long relationship that didn't work. But we were amicable. The other girl was seriously depressed. I loved her, but she was so overwhelmingly depressed. I could do anything. I consider myself an empath, and her depression would seep into me. So I broke it off. My ex was the one that sort of approached me as we were both living in the same apartment complex. I had gone out of my way to help her a few times, but she asked for a ride, and that was what sparked the friendship. Then relationship, I would spend hours with her, whether she was at home or closing at the sandwich store she worked at. She was taking time off from school due to depression and a failed engagement from a year or so ago. Though, as far as I know, she never finished school, period, and transferred twice to other universities. We partially bonded over her story about how she had been betrayed and cheated on by her ex. Though I now question how much of the story was true, we became inseparable. She introduced me to her parents only after 2 months of friends with benefits. After a few months, I wanted her to become my girlfriend, since I simply had no interest in other girls aside from her. She declined, saying she wasn't ready because of her past engagement. This should have been my first red flag. But I, like the idiot I was, gave her a pass. We continued dating exclusively. She didn't date anyone else, and neither did I. A month later, I brought up our status again, because if we were exclusive anyway, why not just admit what we were? She continued to fight. But there were times during our relationship where things seemed perfect. She seemed to like everything I liked. She had similar goals, and we just seemed like a perfect match. But sometimes I would notice backhand remarks about me. She would sometimes compare me and talk about her different exes. We would sometimes fight over such a small thing, and I would try to de-escalate it. But she wouldn't have it. She would run out of my apartment, and at times I would chase after her. She would become angry that I did that, saying I should give her space. So the next time she did that, I wouldn't chase after her. And then she would accuse me of not caring about her. She also began to gaslight me about certain things. I remembered her saying, though, at the time, I didn't know what gaslighting was, but like a sucker in love, I went with it. Many of my friends would remark to me when I spoke about her that I could do better, that she didn't treat me right, but I just brushed it off. People listen to your friends. They usually are looking out for you after dating for a year. I would still bring up becoming official boyfriend-girlfriend, but she was still resilient. She would still say she wasn't ready, but I was the best guy she had ever dated. All of her friends knew we were dating, but to be honest, I didn't like them. She would invite me to hang out with them, but they were very cliche-ish, and I'm not like that. Also, they had a cat, and I'm allergic, so I would use that as an excuse. As time went on, we would go on dates. She would call me every night, and we would stay on the phone all night until one of us woke up the next day. She said due to her depression, that was comforting and helped her sleep. We continued to have problems at times where she would even get physical. She slapped me hard on 2 occasions. Both were not because we were fighting, but because she thought it would be funny each time I told her that was disrespectful, and that since I would never do that to her, I expected the same in return. During one of our fights, she once stated my roommate knows all the guys that would be willing to be non-committal makeouts in the complex, so I don't really need you. But finally, after a little over a year of dating, she gave in and decided to be a girlfriend-boyfriend. But I noticed that she seemed to keep a secret to everyone except her family. I thought it was weird, but seeing as I had gotten what I wanted, I paid no attention to it. I'm going to butt this in here and say, there were times I wasn't a perfectly significant other. I also deal with depression and the stress of work, school, family, and her became too much at times. I lashed out but never hurt her. I would point out the things she had done that were hurtful to me. We broke up several times. Sometimes I would break up with her, and sometimes she would break up with me. But each time, one of us would relent and come back to the other one. I was a bit manipulative and self-harmed to show her how much it was hurting me. She had also self-harmed and expressed being suicidal during us dating. And to be totally honest, I got the idea from her. I was truly in love with her. She told me she was with me. We discussed marriage, children, where we would live, etc. During this time, she moved twice, first to an apartment down the street and then to her parents' house, about an hour north. When she lived in the apartment down street, she threw a party when it was over. None of her friends stayed to help clean, just me. She told me this was proof I'd be a good husband. After her move to her parents, I would visit her almost weekly, but I began to notice a bit of distance at times. She was replying slower and slower to my texts and calls. But if she called or texted me, she expected a quick reply whenever she needed me. I would come to her even at 1 a.m. in the morning when I had work in school. The next day, after a couple of months, I began to suggest getting engaged. But then she started to do the same thing she had done with being girlfriend-boyfriend. She would use her depression from her past relationship as an excuse. And then she asked if we could go back to casually dating. This was the dumbest thing I'd ever done. I said it was okay. I thought this would show her that I was the guy for her over the next few months. She would go on dates, but she would tell me about them and tell me how much better I was than them. I continued to not date because I was a sap in love with her. But I had told her if she found someone she wanted to pursue, I would end our relationship and she could go after him. But then after talking to my friends and family, I had a realization that I was doing all this for her when she wasn't even my girlfriend anymore. So I told her, and she agreed that any physical relationship would end until we got back to being exclusive. Except it didn't. We would go on dates, and she would guilt me, pressure me, and I would give in. She would then immediately afterwards become angry, saying, "Well, why couldn't you resist? Why didn't I stop her?" She became very abusive and hurtful. The worst was when she told me that if she got pregnant, she would never tell me, and only she would decide what to do. And that hurts so much, as I've wanted to be a father and would never leave my children alone. But I would simply fight with her, and we'd end up making up. During all of this, we would continue to talk about a future together. She would see a mixed baby. I'm Latino, and she was white, and say how she saw the cutest baby. That could have been our baby. Whenever she was depressed, she would call me or ask me, "Would you still marry me?" And I would respond, "Of course I would. I love you." It wasn't until Christmas, when I was in Florida visiting my brother, did I begin to suspect something more was up. I'd text her. She wouldn't respond. I'd call her to do the phone thing at night, but she wouldn't answer. But one time she called and asked if I had a specific movie on DVD. And when I asked why, she said I wanted to watch it with my family. But I could sense something was off when I came back from vacation and started the new semester of school. She came to visit me. She came to my university for some reason and lost her Fitbit and called me to help her. I came to help and we spent some time together, but I could feel something was different. She then told me she wanted me to come visit her in 2 days at her parents' house, as she had something to talk to me about. It was then I knew what was coming. I talked to some of my friends and prepared for the worst. When I got to her parents' house, it was late. She asked me to come at 10 p.m. She came into my car and we talked for about 30 minutes to an hour. She told me that she no longer wanted to date me. And I agreed. I told her I had felt her becoming distant. And I asked her if it was someone else. She denied. There was something else, she said. She simply no longer felt we were right for each other. But then she said other things. She said that she never considered me husband material, that she never saw us getting married, having kids, that she had always known from the beginning. She even said another reason she didn't want to be with me was that her kids would look like her because of her being white and me being Latino. This is especially funny now, because she likes to say how progressive and not racist she is. Right, this shocked me. I remember back to all the plans we made all the time. She asked if I would marry her all the time. She had talked about our hypothetical children that hurt the most. I told her I loved her, but that I agreed we were done. We decided on no.